Welcome back to another episode of Life Unscripted. We have another good one here planned for you today. I'm your host, Nick.
And I'm Kelsey.
Stay tuned. We have a political figure, a young individual who's doing great for the community in Milton and Brantford. Is that correct?
That's right.
Adil, welcome to Life Unscripted.
Thank you very much, Kelsey and Nick, for having me. It's really looking forward to a nice conversation.
Absolutely. So I want to go back. I did a little bit of research on you before. Being a counselor, obviously you have a little bit of a bio out there. You're originally from Pakistan, is that correct?
That's right, yeah. From Pakistan, I was born there and then moved to Toronto, where I lived for about 12 years. But we moved to Canada originally, me and my family, 11 months after I was born.
11 months.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So what year is that?
So that was November 2000.
2000.
So, yes.
So you're a 99.
99.
99.
So are we.
We've got a bunch of 99s at the table right now. No, that's awesome. So just take us back to what it was like, coming from Pakistan, coming here, establishing yourself, obviously later on, but your family. Just take us through kind of what that was like.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'm 23 years old right now. So when you do say young, it's not a lie. It actually is true in that sense. But yeah, born in 99 and then in Pakistan and then moved to Toronto where I lived for 12 years. My dad, mother, and we immigrated here relatively quickly after I was born. And then after living in Toronto, it's in 2012 when we moved to Milton, which is where I live right now.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a little bit about, where I'm coming from in terms of getting to Canada. But
right.
Going up from there, when I was young, I really got involved in the community and really wanted to, be a part of the community rather than just in it. And yeah.
So take us through that a little bit. You obviously have done a ton of volunteer work. As I mentioned before, we'll get into a little bit later. You're a counselor,
Yep.
Ward 3 for Milton, I believe. Take us through kind of why you want to volunteer, why you started volunteering, and some of the organizations that you did volunteer work with.
Yeah, of course. So this actually goes back to when I was 10 years old, which is when I first started volunteering. And funny enough, the first thing that I ever did in terms of community involvement was help out on a municipal election campaign for a candidate that was running in the ward that I was living in Toronto.
Oh, so you were helping someone who wanted to be a counselor in Ward 3.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
And fun fact, he's actually currently a counselor
is he?
in that area as well,
Wow.
to date. So it comes back full circle, but we'll get to that, I'm sure. But that's where it starts. When I was really young, at the age of 10, I got involved in the community through municipal politics, but then that expanded into really, helping out at any really community event,
Right.
different organizations and those type of things. And that, admiration I had for just being involved in the community and being around people, helping people, and not being behind a desk is something that really, inspired me to go into public service in some sort of capacity.
Right. Is your parents in any type of political work, or what was that kind of the driving force behind it, or are they in something completely different?
So policing and politics are not common from, my culture, from
Right.
people from my background as well. So I'm the first one, I believe, in my family and extended family to ever pursue these two lines of work.
Good for you.
So it is really, different from what the rest of the family normally does. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to go back for a second. So are you an only child?
I'm an only child.
Only
yes.
child.
Yeah.
So do you know what the process is for citizenship? Like you came when you were young, but was it hard to get citizenship here?
I think at that time, after we immigrated, it was about a 5-year wait that we have to meet some criteria and then we become citizens. So there was a process that we had to
Right.
go through. So lengthy.
And then
at the
all
time.
of you would have had to apply for that or whatever
Yes.
it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
And which came first? Did the policing, I know we're jumping forward a little bit,
Yep.
did the policing come first, or did the council work come first?
So policing came first in terms
Okay.
of the career itself.
Right.
But that being said, I've always been involved in some sort of political capacity as a volunteer or part of, various campaigns, both municipal, federal, and provincial. Just always loved that element of, serving the community and being
Right.
part of a campaign. You get to work in a team, get to go out there, meet with your neighbors, members in the community, attend events, and really connect with people in a way where you get to, listen to them, their issues. And even if you're not the candidate, but even in that volunteer capacity, you get to really understand where people's concerns really lie. And
Right.
just having that in the back of your head, allows you to be a good person in all other aspects of your life, while at the same time serving the community in that lens.
And you also get to see where there's going to be areas of improvement in the community. So that's great. Through that, how long was it for volunteer work to then transition to put your name on the ballot and go for it for Ward 3 in Milton?
Yeah, so like I said, I started volunteering really young, but in high school, I remember that I graduated with about 560 hours that were actually documented in high school.
They were real. They weren't fake. 'Cause I know everybody listening, when they're doing volunteer work, it's all fake. You're not fooling any of us.
No, it wasn't fake. It was actual legit stuff. But, it
Good
was
for
stuff
you.
that I enjoyed doing. And that's what translated into the 2 careers that I'm in right now. But I stopped counting after 1,000. But just, kept track of where I go and all that type of things. And still to this date, I'm still out there volunteering in the community for some organizations, and anywhere where people really need help, I'm there. So
No, that's awesome. Where did you go for schooling?
So high school I did in Milton. It was at
Okay.
Milton District High School for all 4 years. And, in that stage of life is when you get to really, especially in the grade 11 and 12 years, really get to, pick specific courses that can guide you towards the kind of career that you want to go into.
Right.
So for me, it was always policing.
Yeah.
That was a dream of mine to go into, becoming a police officer. So I took those, courses like law, leadership, those type of courses to be able to get there.
Right.
But before that, elementary school was done primarily in Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then post-secondary?
I went to Mohawk College in Hamilton. I
Okay.
did police foundations there for 2 years. Then I did the advanced police studies program for 1 year.
Nice. So that ended up being a 3-year program?
Correct, yes.
Is that the same as the one that's offered at Niagara?
For the police foundations,
Yeah.
they're relatively the same
Relatively
in
the
all
same.
of the colleges.
Okay.
Certain colleges don't offer the advanced program, but the way they teach it and deliver it is going to be slightly different because you have different professors,
For
the
sure.
different type of things. It's really
100%.
subjective in nature. What I found at Mohawk was that the professors were primarily people that used to be police officers
Right.
or somewhere in the justice system, and they used their experiences to build a curriculum to teach a particular course.
They're not just teaching theory. They're actually talking about real life experiences.
So after the 3 years, do you have to go to like a police college?
Yes.
Or, okay.
So that was post-secondary, just like anybody can do university or college. But in terms of when you're hired on as a police officer, you have to, in Ontario, all police officers go to Ontario Police College, which is in Elmer, Ontario.
Yeah.
You live there Monday to Friday. You're allowed to leave on the weekends or throughout the week, but not many people do.
Right.
But that's 3 months intensive training where they're teaching you at the basic level on how to be a police constable. So that's the fundamental training that everybody does in Ontario. It's standardized. You get to work with other new hires that are from different services. You're in a pod of 10 other recruits, and you're there in a class of various recruits from various services. So
I think Danny did that. My buddy, he's a border officer, and I think he also went to Elmer, and he did all that. Does that make sense?
He might have actually gone to Quebec.
Yes,
CBSA
sorry.
does.
That's correct.
Yes,
Yeah, he went to Quebec.
Yeah, so RCMP, for example, they'll go to, I believe it's Saskatchewan, they go to a depot.
Okay.
So there's strictly just RCMP only type training there. And then Border Services officers, they go to the Quebec training facility there.
Okay.
So police college is after you've been hired.
Correct,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
It's after you're hired, and all services except for RCMP or CBSA, they end up going there for that standardized training.
I'm assuming
Yeah.
you don't have to pay out of pocket for that.
So you used to. The fee
Oh,
used to be
wow.
about $15,000
What?
for the intake. Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
expensive. But the way they designed it in the past was that you pay that amount. It's on the recruit to pay that. Some services would pay that for you, but you would pay the service back.
Okay.
So Sam and Megan.
Meg. Yeah.
Megan talked about how she did that, and they paid for it initially, but then it came off her pay
It came off pay. Okay.
until she paid them back.
That's kind of crazy.
So I think my class of recruits, or my year of recruits when we went, was the last class or the last set of few classes before the province of Ontario decided to cover the fee of that tuition. So had I had been hired a little bit later, I wouldn't have had to pay anything for tuition, but I'm still paying that tuition off right now, right? So
And is it just coming off of like each paycheck, or do you have to do it separately?
yeah, they designed it in different ways. There's police unions that you can go through, or
Right.
associations to get some compensation directly from your paycheck, or you could pay it yourself or get a line of credit, whatever you need to do.
Right.
Right.
No, that's super interesting. And do you have any further aspirations? I know people who go into policing, they want to start as a constable. They kind of want to do the beat. They want to, learn how the systems work, but then they want to transition into something specialized, whether it be investigation, various units? Do you have something that you want to go towards in the future?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, this is one of those careers where you get to really shape what your pathway is and what your interests are, and let that guide you into where you want to be in policing. So for me, it's always been something in the detective's role, and at the same time in the community services role. Which goes hand in hand with the political side of things too. I love being out there in the public, talking to people, engaging with people, listening to them, and then solving problems. And the ability to do that through a detective's lens, maybe in a specialized unit that slows things down, investigates certain types of offenses and crimes in a more longer period of time basis,
right,
and gets help for victims of serious crime. And then on the other end, the community service piece where you're out there in the community, possibly, in recruiting, hiring the next generation, but at the same time, going to events and talking to people, bridging that gap between police and public and bringing people together.
Right, and just having the overall awareness for it, having that, there's a lot of stuff around policing right now. It's tough to be a police officer right now.
Absolutely.
So,
and, that's the reason I got into policing. It's, one of those careers where the public is always, has expectations that are going to be ever changing.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first one to say there are things in policing that we need to do better at, and that we need to always be flexible to the fact that the needs of the public come first and their needs are going to be changing. And it's one of those careers where, policing is, everybody's hesitant towards change and all
Yeah.
that. People get used to doing things in a certain way, but then things change. You have to have an open mind and do that. So being a young person who's diverse and somebody who wants to shape the next generation of policing, it's something that really inspired me to get into policing.
Yeah, and I think it's like that with every career. In nursing and in my field, there's always going to be an expectation of some sort of delivery or outcome for it. It just happens that, in policing, you're under a spotlight, you're recorded 24/7 pretty much. So there's a lot of scrutiny for it. So I commend anybody that's in that field and that's pursuing that.
So one thing I've heard about Brantford policing, in compared to, like, say Toronto policing, is that Toronto was always partnered work. There was always two on every call. It's not like that in Brantford, is it?
No, I mean, we're a smaller service compared to Toronto, so the resources we have are different than a place like Toronto, which is much bigger, more well-funded, and they have different, types of needs and issues in the community that they need. Maybe that for, like, public safety is probably way different there, and officer safety as well, compared to, which requires them to have another officer with them. Whereas us, we still have other officers on our shifts, but if we're responding to a call, 99% of the time they're responding or sending us to a call in response with another officer that's in your same patrol zone or in the city somewhere else.
Okay.
Yeah, because I would say, given more recent events, it could be quite scary doing stopping a car by yourself or going to someone's house by yourself. I would find that intimidating.
Yeah, no, it's you assume a risk when you put the uniform on when you're driving in a police car. I mean, you're a target, right, for your 12-hour
100%.
shift, and it's one of those things where you're seeing it now too. In recent years, we've seen people become more violent towards police and kill police officers at a number that we haven't seen before in such a short period of time. So that is pretty alarming, and there is that risk that you assume when you go into this line of work, but the rewarding, sense of reward that you get for actually going into that line of work, helping people and, solving people's problems is really rewarding. So it outweighs that risk for many of us that choose this line of work.
Yeah, it definitely takes a special individual to work in that, in that field. So kudos to you, and kudos to everybody out there that's watching, that's, in the policing and enforcement avenue. Another aspect I want to touch on for policing, is there an ideal location, final destination, like this is ideal place I want to, work the streets and be a detective or a police officer for, or is that Brantford?
It's for me, it's about, the sky's always the limit. There's always something you can do better. There's always something you can work towards. Being achievement oriented is something that I really like, about something about me that I really like. And I just do my best every single day, and I keep my doors open, and wherever the wind takes me is my mindset in relation to this. At the end of the day, my goal was to become a police officer, and now what happens next in terms of career progression, it's hard to predict, but you never know what could happen. So
No, you don't. So I think that's going to transition us into our next piece. Another big piece of you and what makes you who you are is your council work for the city of Milton. So I want to touch on that and kind of just go over your experience of it, what you enjoy about it, what your overall goals are, and we'll dive in a little bit deeper because I have a little bit of background on the council side because I work for the city of Niagara Falls. So we'll touch on that after. But first, start with how you've been enjoying it.
So I love it. It's just been over a year now in Milton politics at the municipal level. Politics and policing are both of those things are something that I've always, it's hard for me to choose which one I like better. They're both right up there.
Yeah.
And I've always been involved in some capacity as a volunteer for either end of those before becoming a police officer and then now becoming a councillor. But that came from a rich history of me, helping with many different campaigns for other candidates in different, election cycles. So it's one of those things where you get to serve the public in a very unique way in terms of being the best advocate you can be for the community. At the end of the day, town staff and the people that make up the organization, they're going to do that tactical stuff in terms of getting things done and maintaining our parks or making our buses run, those type of things. But council really sets the direction of where we want the municipality to go.
Absolutely.
And that's based off of the residents that reach out to us as individual councillors from the different wards that we represent. And our job as a councillor is to advocate those concerns, listen to their voice, and make sure staff are aware that this is where the community wants us to go, and then they make us get there.
Right. Yeah. So I'll use that as a segue into, did you recently finish capital meetings for 2024?
Our budget meeting is coming up on December 4th. So we're almost there. Yeah.
Okay. And is there anything that you want to see in that budget meeting that, you've seen throughout the community that, the residents they're screaming for? They want it. They want their tax dollars to go towards it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Milton is one of those places where we have some of the lowest property taxes compared to nearby municipalities.
Wow.
So some councils and some residents in different parts of the community really pride themselves on that affordability piece in terms of property taxes. And then there's other residents, particularly in Ward 3 where I am, that's newer growth areas of Milton where they want us to see more investment in things like transit and things like improving road safety, initiatives that will help invest in making Milton a complete community where everybody can live, work, learn, and play.
Right.
Keeping that in mind, I'm one councillor out of the rest of my colleagues, including the mayor. Each area of Milton is different in a different way. I mean, we all have the same common goal of making Milton the best place to live.
Yep.
But at the same time, the other councillors might have different priorities based on what they're hearing from their residents in older Milton versus newer Milton. So,
and overall, what their goals are as a councillor, right? They want to see their own improvements in the community growing up, whether they're born and raised there. They want to put their own stamp on Milton in a whole as well.
Exactly, and that's the really unique part about it is that you get to work together with all of them, and then you need 5 votes to get something passed. And sometimes it'll be sharing that win with different parts of Milton and different other councillors that are there with you, because they're fighting for their things, and then we're fighting for our things. Yeah.
How do you decide what concerns you bring up? Like, say, someone wants better transit, somebody wants road safety. Like, if you have so many different concerns that people are asking you to bring forward, how do you decide?
So that's a tough one because obviously we're working with, there's some councillors that don't want the operating budget or property taxes to increase beyond a certain amount or at all in some cases, but things cost money. So it all depends on prioritization of what the commonality is from what you're hearing from residents.
Okay.
The true way a councillor can get a good sense of things is by, first of all, talking to the people that you're elected to represent. When I was knocking on doors, I'm going to go back to the campaign. One of the big things I heard at the doors was that people that get elected, they're here at the doors during election time, but then they disappear.
Was this for when you were in campaign?
Correct.
Or when you're it was for your campaign?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, but I heard it as a volunteer on other campaigns as well. And that's one thing I wanted to change when I got the job is that the engagement doesn't stop or only happen during election campaigns. It continues throughout the term. So keeping engaged with the community and making sure you're giving them avenues through social media, through your email, through community events to reach out to you and talk to you about what issues are on their mind. The more conversations you have, the more, sense of commonality you'll get from what the community is saying to you in your particular area. And then that can translate into something in terms of a budget ask or item that you could put forward as an amendment to get into the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say firsthand that City of Niagara Falls went throughout COVID, I believe it was 3 years, with a 0% tax levy increase. And the problem that we're seeing now, so I'm in the facility side, is when we're going forward, like last year, we were asking for all these things for various buildings, whether it be City Hall, the pools, some of our museums. These are necessary in order for these buildings to remain open and remain safe. But the response when we hit the taxpayers with, I think it ended up being a 17% increase total, regional and like local, was this is crazy. But I don't think that they were able to understand the fact of they wanted it to remain a 0% tax increase for those 3+ years, and now we have to play catch up. So it's tough. It's very tough.
And look at the times we're in right now too. On top of that, the cost of doing what we've regularly been doing at status quo levels has gone up because of inflation, because of the uncertainty around, the communities across Ontario, across the world. And that's really, chipped into where do we really put our investment in? Because at the same time, we want to understand that, or we recognize that people are facing a tough time right now financially. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we're not continuing to defer important investments that make the community function and cater to the growth that our communities across the GTA and across areas in Ontario are getting. Milton's one of the fastest growing municipalities out there right now. We're projected to grow to 350,000 by 2051.
Wow.
We're at 140,000 right now, and we need to make the investments in things like public services, better facilities, invest in staffing for programs that we offer in terms of recreation and other areas, and making sure our staff have the resources they need to cater to the growth that's coming in our community. And at the same time, serve the people of Milton with the expectation that they are also going to be taken care of financially in terms of property taxes, while at the same time giving them the services that they need and that they deserve.
Yeah, and they definitely want to see that their tax money is going to something good.
Yeah.
On my end, nobody sees anything. Everything's behind the walls or it's on the roof. So they always want to see those things. They want to see road improvements. They want to see parks being upgraded, pools being upgraded. Is there an aspect to the budget side of it that frustrates council? Or is it always, how do I pose this question? Doesn't frustrate council, but is it upsetting, like having to defer certain items that the public needs, but you also know, like in certain times like this, you guys can't put forward because it would put too much of an onus on financials in the public?
Absolutely. It goes back to what the comment you made just a little while ago about how here in Niagara Falls you've seen how there's been deferrals or 0% increases, which has resulted in not making those investments that we need.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, previous councils have done that in Milton. We've seen it happen where, in good times, where it's reasonable to make some investments, we've passed 0% budgets or budgets that are not really reflective of the investment that's needed in the community. And what that's resulted in is that, again, we're playing catch up, but at the same time, we don't have the level of ability or maybe to invest now because of the financial situation people are facing that we could have done previously.
Right.
So balancing all of that, there's still the fact that if you don't do it now, you're going to have to do it at some point.
And it's probably going to be double the cost.
And you don't know what it's going to be like in 5 years from now, what the situations are going to be like, what could change. That's the consequence of long-term thinking, is that you never know what could happen. Things like the pandemic, things like, the uncertainties around the financial situation people are facing from a number of reasons. Those type of things is hard to predict. But when we are in a situation where we know we have to at some point make these investments, let's make these investments.
Yeah, absolutely.
How long is a term?
4 years.
Okay. Yeah. And then when that would come to an end, would you have to campaign again if you wanted to be reelected?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it'd be a re-election campaign in that case.
Yeah.
Do you have aspirations to have the gavel?
Well, I mean, for now, I want to stick to my local councillor position there. I really like that very much. It's a grassroots level position. And I'm not ready to leave policing. If I did a higher position or a different position that has more of a commitment,
right,
I would have to make that choice of leaving policing, which I'm not ready to do. I love both my jobs, and I get to, serve the public in various ways where I am now.
I feel like both jobs keep you very busy.
They do.
Because if you're not policing, you're doing council work.
Yes.
And vice versa.
That is true. A lot of the work is done virtually for the council side of things, but we do have those, in-person workshops and council meetings, meeting with residents, attending community events, making a newsletter, doing all that behind the scenes admin work. So it does keep you busy. But the good thing about policing is that we do our 12-hour shifts and we have time off that's, 5 days off in a row or 4 days off in a row. On top of that, your vacation time that you could, use a day here and there to get extended time off. and that allows you to catch up on the other side of things.
For sure. So it's like for policing, it's one shift and then however many off?
Yeah, so we work 5 shifts, then we
Okay.
get 4 off, then 4 shifts, 5 off.
Okay.
So it like rotates.
Yeah. So
Is it pretty easy to get time off if you request vacation?
Yes, given that it goes by seniority.
Okay.
It's based off of, the senior officer gets to choose their vacation picks first and all that. But I mean, if there's an opening there, we can only have a certain amount of officers off at one time. You can apply and you get that off. Yeah.
You were mentioning previously that Milton's projected to grow pretty rapidly in the coming years. Do you have is there like a main, not demographic, but main area that residents are coming from? Like I'm noticing down in the Niagara region, there's a lot of residents coming from Toronto.
Yeah.
They're selling, an apartment and they're moving down here. Is there a main area?
Yes, people are coming from different parts of the GTA.
Right.
People from Brampton, Mississauga, Toronto, various parts. They're coming to Milton, and we're seeing growth. The ward that I represent is a growth area. Wards 3 and 4 are both growth areas, so that's where a lot of the growth is coming. And the way we're growing is going to be by higher density, so we're getting more buildings coming in as well to cater to the growth. Given also on that note, the province is telling us that we are, they want to build those 1.5 million homes. They want to see municipalities take more action to build more housing. And Milton's already ahead of that, and we're building housing. We're getting a lot of stuff done there to accommodate to that growth.
So are you doing more of townhomes, compact housing,
So
to accommodate that?
The approach Milton has taken towards housing is that we don't want just one type of housing.
Right.
We want various diverse types of housing, but to cater to this rapid growth that we're seeing, we're going to be building high density development, which is your high-rise buildings, in really high-rise buildings in those transit corridors, right in front of a GO station, for example, and then medium-density buildings in the other areas that are also going to enable us to have a transit system that gets people going to where they need to be, creating those walkable communities and a community where people are less dependent on cars, and owning a car is a choice rather than a necessity.
Right. Are you seeing a lot of like official plan amendments having to go through to rezone these various locations? Because I find, like you mentioned, near a transit station, it could be more industrial, commercial, but in order to obviously build that high rise, you then will have to rezone it. Are you seeing a lot of those coming forward from the
so we
side?
recently did new strategic planning, set the direction of how we want to and where we want to put our investments, but at the same time we're also revitalizing our official plan to cater towards how we grow as a community, amongst other things.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's awesome to see how different municipalities grow and how they adapt through various times. That's great.
I have a couple questions about policing that are just very basic,
Sure.
but I don't know about them. Does Brantford have a canine unit?
We have 2 canines.
Okay. And what are they used for specifically?
Missing person searches, suspect searches, clearing buildings, clearing vehicles,
Okay.
finding articles that are lost property, those type of things.
So how would a dog find a missing person? Like, would you use scent or, yeah?
Yes, it would be
Okay.
sent. They're pretty good at that. So what they do, from what I remember speaking to one of our canine operators, is that the dog is trained to detect body odor.
Okay.
So when it's looking at the ground or smelling the ground, those areas, it's looking for the freshest scent for body odor, and it'll track based off of that.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the suspect's or the missing
Right.
person's scent, but if you get a track, you're going to follow that track, and that's how they
Right.
go from there.
And see where it leads. And then I've also seen your uniform, but there's a lot of cops that come in the gray.
Yep.
What is the gray?
So those are officers that are assigned to our emergency response team. So that's our special tactical unit that
Okay.
responds to high-risk situations like barricaded persons, hostage situations, high-risk weapons calls, those really serious types of incidents that they will
Okay.
be going to first as a primary role. They have additional training, additional tools and equipment that they can use in those type of situations.
Gotcha.
When that type of situation isn't happening, they're still on the road helping us as a general patrol officer as well.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to have seen some crazy things as a police officer.
There's some crazy stuff, and there's a lot of traumatic stuff too.
Is there anything that you're able to share that isn't traumatic, but just something that you can never really think about seeing if you're not in that field?
Well, I guess the best, the crazy stuff is a lot of things that we deal with, but I would say one of the things that really catches you off guard is when you go to a call that comes in as a nothing call and then it turns into something so much different.
Yeah, you see those all over TV.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things that comes to mind is, us getting a call for a person passed out in a taxi cab and then us responding there. interaction results in, the person getting arrested, and then you find a gun on the person, right?
Right.
Those type of things. It's, again, you don't expect much from that call because you deal
Seems
with
like
similar,
something small, and then
it turns into something else. So that, really sets you back. Be like, oh my God, that guy had a gun. We got to make sure we're always keeping our guard up and all that type of thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure that those are some learning moments in every career. You kind of get not complacent, but you get comfortable.
Yeah.
How many times do you respond to a homeless person and it just ends up being a homeless person? Okay, carry on with the day. But then the one time you show up, it could have been something a little bit
and
different.
turns into something else. It's that's the really unique part about this job is, you're in your car, that's your office, and then you go to your calls, or you're proactively patrolling the streets, stopping cars, and you never know what could happen or what it could turn into. So.
Yeah.
So at the hospital, we have a lot of regular patients. Do you have a lot of regular?
Yes, we have a regular.
People.
You would know.
Yes,
we have our regular clients that we deal with. But it's those people are going through some struggles in their life, and it sucks sometimes, going into those situations because it's just a cycle of, we're just constantly dealing with these people. But there needs to be, other supports in place to maybe get people the solutions to their problems that they're facing. So in policing, you see it all the time. We go into calls where people expect us to solve their entire problem that's been going on for maybe a few years in a matter of 5-10 minutes while we're there. But that's not the case, right? We need to offer those referrals, which is what we do. We allow people to, recognize that there are mechanisms and other long-term supports that are in place to get them the help they need. But
is there a benefit, obviously working in 2 different municipalities, 2 different roles? Is there a benefit to that? Like, do you see things in Brantford that you definitely want to implement in Milton and then vice versa?
Yeah, I mean, things like, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. One of the things that, in terms of road safety that I'm working on in a budget amendment is to create a new pilot project for some flashing beacon lights at our stop signs that have high collision rates.
Okay.
So that's something Brantford actually does do. It has flashing red beacons at their always stop signs, which is something I'm like, hey, that's pretty neat. I wonder what the thought process behind that is. And then, looking into that was based off of collision data. So I was able to, do that there. And it's one of the budget amendments that I'll be bringing forward on the 4th. But yeah, it goes hand in hand. But then also just in general decision making, just having that, policing mindset or the perspective of a police officer, because we're dealing with so many things on the road, really helps, guide the other decisions that we might make from a municipal perspective as a councillor.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Besides work, what makes you? Besides work, besides all of that, like you said, you're 23. What makes you?
Yeah. So what, like my hobbies, stuff like that. I love going out with my friends to play some pool, billiards. I've been getting good at that over, every time I play. So that's something I really like doing. But honestly, just hanging with a few friends and having friends that aren't police officers as well helps, get away from the work stuff. So keeps that balance. But, just going out and grabbing a coffee with a few friends. I'm pretty simple in that way.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did you play? Billiards? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
I don't.
It's good to get away from work. Everybody, like, we all get so caught up in it. It's work, right? And then when you can separate life and work, it's good. So
yeah, and what I tell people all the time is that make sure you go into a field that you really want to go into, because you'll enjoy it in that case, and it won't feel like work in many cases, right? It'll be an extension of who you are as a person, and that can be really meaningful for you to be happy of the place you're working at and going there and getting your job done.
Yeah, no, that's great. You definitely have to enjoy life. It's not just work. I always say I don't. I don't work to live. I don't live to work. I work to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I always say.
Yeah, I don't know. A big problem, not a problem, but most of my friends are nurses. So when we're not working, it's hard to find time to be together because everyone works different schedules. And then when we do work, there's always something that happened at work that you want to talk about. And sometimes it's nice because when I talk to other nurses about it, they get it. But on the other hand, I don't always want to be talking about my job.
No, exactly. Yeah, having that balance is really important, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're there 12 hours, in policing, you're there 12 hours. You're going to be around fellow coworkers that some of them are going to be your friends too, and you're going to want to talk to them and all that, hang out with them on a regular basis outside of work as well. But at the same time, having the ability to talk to other people as well can help that with that balance. Yeah.
Do you see councillors, politicians, all of that more coming up currently being from, our generation? Or do you think it's still primarily dominated with, I wouldn't say the older generation, but it is. It's an older generation, style of thinking.
It is. And even the voter turnout reflects that. The voter turnout in municipal elections is generally the lowest. But I mean, recently in many of the other elections as well, provincially, federally, and municipally, we've been seeing that the voter turnout has not been good. Also, in terms of the people that sign up to run for these type of positions, no, it's still dominated by, an older demographic from a previous generation.
Right.
I am the youngest councillor in Milton Council right now. I believe I'm the youngest ever to be elected there.
Wow.
I got the job there at 22.
Good for you.
So it's one of those things where we need young people to get involved. I mean, it's their future. Milton, if you look at the stats in terms of who makes up our community, it's mainly young people. And having their voice on the table is just as important as everybody else in the community as well.
What advice would you give somebody who's listening to this right now that is, younger, has aspirations, but is a little bit hesitant, a little bit scared to enter a field such as politics?
Yeah, so it takes a lot of, you lose a lot of privacy in that line of work, first of all. So it's definitely a big decision you have to make. But I would say that at the end of the day, ask yourself why you want the job. And if somebody were to ask you, why do you want the job, what your answer to that is going to be. And if your answer is rooted in the fact that you want to help make a difference in your community, serve people, and that you're connected with people and you want to extend what you're already doing in whatever capacity you're in right now, that'll help resonate with the community, and it'll ultimately fuel you into, extending what you've already been doing in maybe a volunteer capacity or another capacity to translate into an actual job where you get to do it for a living.
And would the first step that you would recommend be volunteer for like another councillor's campaign, or what would that first step be?
Absolutely, get involved from the political end of things. Absolutely, and you should know how campaigns works and the groundwork that you need to do to win an election. But at the same time, being involved in your community to understand what people's issues are, listening to people need to know you. People need to have trust in you and respect you, and that type of thing will go a long way when you go out there and asking for their vote. Because they'll know that you're not just a person who wants the job, but you've actually been a volunteer. You've been helping your community. You've been listening to the community, and you know what the issues are, and you have a bit of a plan or a vision of what you want to do with the job. That is what will help you be successful in politics.
For sure. Is there anything that you've had to give up in like your social life to make that move? Like you said, there's a lot of, you end up being very public facing. Is there anything that you kind of had to I'm just going to step away from that and then move forward with this career?
Yeah, no, it's basically, that's the biggest thing. It's the privacy that you lose, because I mean, you're a public figure at the end of the day. Your job is to be in the public, engage with people in a public manner. On social media, you'll have residents reaching out to you. You have to update them with what's going on. So
right.
That's very much the biggest thing, but you have to be understanding towards that's the reality of the job.
Yeah.
I could also see there, not that I could see you doing this personally, but public speakers who are out with their friends and someone records them saying or doing something that is misinterpreted, and then it's posted on the internet. Like, I feel like that could be very hard too. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's something you have to consider. Yeah.
But again, it's just like policing as well, right? I mean, yeah, I'm off duty, but we're never really off duty, right? Everybody knows that we're held to a higher standard, and we have a responsibility to the people that we're serving to make sure that we're doing that professionally, and even in our private lives, right?
Yeah.
When you're out there in the public, you have to make sure you're representing not just yourself, but then at the same time you have a responsibility to make sure you're representing your municipality or your police service in a professional way. Yeah,
people just don't know the name in that career. They know your face. They know pretty much everything about you. So yeah, you definitely have to be careful.
Yeah.
So back to policing, if you were out in public off duty, but say, I don't know, you were out somewhere and you see a situation that could probably use police attendance, are you allowed to step in, or are you technically off duty?
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously officer safety, we take that into consideration. We don't have any of our equipment with us either,
sure.
Right? But if it's something like which is really severe, we do have some sort of obligation to make sure we intervene in that, and we have the authority 24/7
right.
to enact as a police officer. We take that oath. As long as you're not retired or it doesn't matter if you're off duty, you have the authority to act as a police officer in your capacity, whether you're on or off duty, anywhere in Ontario.
Isn't it like that with just like a general citizen? Isn't like a citizen's arrest? What is the extent of that?
So citizen has the ability to make an arrest in very limited circumstances, where if they find somebody committing a criminal offense, they can't lose sight of a person. They can't arrest somebody on reasonable grounds unless, it meets a certain threshold, whereby, like, for example, if you see somebody assaulting someone really badly,
right,
technically you can go and make a citizen's arrest there. But if somebody came up to you after the fact saying, hey, that person assaulted me, you don't have the authority to make an arrest there, whereas police would based on that information.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right,
So
there's a
you have to
difference
see
there.
it first.
Kind of
Yeah.
have to witness
Yeah,
it
the
directly.
police powers of arrest are much different than the citizen's power of arrest. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rules, a lot of regulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best thing to do in those situations is keep an eye on the situation, call 911, let the police come in and handle the situation, and keep
For sure.
updating them over the phone of what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have any other questions?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Do you have any questions for us?
What you said you work for the municipality. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I work for the City of Niagara Falls.
Yep.
I'm a facilities technologist, so I oversee the corporate buildings, the facilities, anything to do with, I mean, you guys probably have facilities
Yep.
departments. So right now, I was asking about the capital because we just got our approvals for 2024 capital, and then operating will be, in the near future. So it's interesting for me to see. Niagara Falls is the first municipality that I've worked for. It's interesting to see how other municipalities operate, kind of what their goals are moving forward, because we as a department and us as facilities, we have goals that we want to see as well. Sometimes they don't always get approved, sometimes they get deferred, but yeah, it's always great to see what other municipalities' overall goals are. But that's kind of me in a nutshell at work.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You also
great.
coach volleyball?
Yeah, sorry. I also coach
Yes.
Niagara College men's volleyball. I assistant coach that. I played there for 2 years. It was right in the heart of COVID, so my playing career kind of came to a uttering halt.
Yep.
And then I quickly transitioned into a coaching role. So I think I've done that for the past 3 years. So
Awesome.
that's kind of what makes me me. And obviously, I just like to have fun and do a podcast.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Besides work, tell us about you.
I don't do much. I'm busy right now. I work at the hospital full time, but I also teach nursing students. So that takes up a lot of my time because not only am I with them 3 times a week right now, there's a lot of paperwork and assignments and grading and emails that goes into that. Other than that, I play soccer a little while, or for a little while.
For a little while.
I've played soccer a long time, but I just started playing here. And other than that, I don't really do much.
Yeah. I personally don't have anything else. I think we've kind of hit everything. Was there anything that you wanted to touch upon that we haven't?
No, I think that was a great conversation. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for both of you for having me on.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for coming.
My
We
pleasure.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Again, thank you for tuning in. This is another episode of Life Unscripted. Hit that like, comment, subscribe, bell notification, anything that you can do so you can get the notification next time we have an episode. Anyways, stay tuned and we'll see you on the next one.